Like maybe being a detective again.
True Detective Season 3 is back. I've been loving it so far. If you guys have not subscribed, make sure to do so. And if you want to support creativity, make sure to click on the link below and check out that Patreon. But we will be briefly discussing the story structure, the very structure to what seemingly has very little structure whatsoever. But no, we'll be speaking about Dramatica and about the dynamic between the polar opposites that's necessary for this story theory. Of course, we'll be looking into the partner aspect. Season 1, we have our polar opposites within our two detectives. In Season 3, it's my belief that yes, West and Hayes are awesome, but really, your polar opposite dynamic is coming from Amelia and Hayes. So we're going to talk about what this does, how it does it, and why it's so effective.
You tracked men in the war?
I did. Did you march?
I did.
Funny how the protest stops once the draft ended.
The Dramatica theory of story. This applies a basic model of psychology to narrative. It doesn't see psychology in narrative. Really, Dramatica is not all that complicated. It sees the central character of a story, the main character, entering with a predetermined way of doing things. Along the way, they develop a relationship with their polar opposite, someone who challenges their way of thinking. Ultimately, the relationship leads the main character towards adopting or rejecting this new way of seeing things. The result of their decision determines whether they'll be on the right path or the wrong path. When it all comes down to it, Dramatica sees story as an argument. To provide the very best argument, you must make sure you cover all bases and address the different perspectives. What makes True Detective and Dramatica fit so well together is the fact that if you're going to solve a case, you need to exhaust all resources. You need to examine all possibilities. When you have 8 hours to tell a story that arguably, yes, could be told in a linear fashion that would lead you to the same conclusion as far as the whodunit aspect, it's important to remember this story would only convey a Murder, She Wrote-esque message when what we're really looking to deliver is vastly more ambitious.
In this century and moment of mania, tell me a story. Make it a story of great distances and starlight. The name of the story will be Time, but you must not pronounce its name. Tell me a story of deep delight. What do you think Warren means by that? Why mustn't you say the name of the story? Anybody?
A broader message in themes that run deeper than a whodunit. This is a commentary on society, on humanity. Just think about Dramatica as kind of a ball in a pinball machine that is connecting with all those different light sensors. Every time it hits, one lights up. That's Dramatica. That's the way of the storytelling. Every single time that ball's going around in the pinball machine, it's hitting another character. It's hitting on another possible suspect, a possible lead. This is going into another angle. Every single time when they look into the community and they look at all their suspects, they need to hit on every single angle. And it's not necessarily in perfect order. It's not going to be the quickest way to the answer, but we will get the larger message that is trying to be conveyed about humanity, about our society, only after that pinball hits off of every single one of these sensors. So we get another perspective, another look, another insight, another, yes, possible candidate for the whodunit, but more so another look into the larger issues at hand. I guess in this analogy, the pinball itself would be the characters in which we get this story through. We mostly have it conveyed through Hayes, but we're led to believe that the other half of that perspective is going to be provided to us via his polar opposite, his partner. Season 3 takes it to another level when we work with these types of relationships that are needed to properly convey these messages. We need a proper polar opposite relationship. In Season 1, we see a bromance of sorts, for lack of a better word, but nonetheless, sort of a bromance. In Season 3, we get a much more traditional relationship. We get a marriage. We get Hayes and Amelia, for better or worse, and they get each other, for better or worse. It's not just two detectives that are approaching a case in a different way. We have two human beings who are approaching a tragedy in a different way. These two couldn't be further apart, but nonetheless, just like season 1, we are not going to be able to get the conclusion of our story, the proper conveyance of the message, without the other half. And I believe this is why Hayes' casework and Amelia's book are the key. Once you put those together, you have this connection that creates the perfect perspective, if only momentarily.
Light versus dark.
To give just a brief insight into the human condition, which is really what True Detective's all about, how we deal with tragedy, who we are within it and who we are because of it. And we can get a taste of that in some of the arguments in which we see with Amelia and Hayes throughout the first 4 episodes.
And even so, did you harden your heart against what loved you most?
I like this.
Just to give us a quick rundown of how this can really play off and how it can really be done right, we can look at season 1, since we obviously have the conclusion for that, and just show you one of the arguments that is, yes, an ongoing argument even when they're just driving in their car. But in episode 3 of season 1, we really get a great showcasing of what I'm speaking about here. See it commence, and then we can actually see the overall outcome of this.
Old-time religion. You can imagine what Mr. Charisma thought of that.
See this argument between Marty and Russ that revolves around the presence of an afterlife. This is an argument that extends into disagreements over the existence of God and the relative object value of religion and human experience. The two argue over the common good, with Marty taking the side of those praying before them, being the good Christian he is, and Russ responds with a version of his own truth.
On your high horse, what do you know about these people?
Just observation and deduction. See a propensity for obesity, poverty, a yen for fairy tales. Folks putting what few bucks they do have into little wicker baskets being passed around. I think it's safe to say that nobody here is going to be splitting the atom, Marty.
You see that? Your fucking attitude.
If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person's a piece of shit. And I'd like to get as many of them out and open as possible. Russ is a nihilist, pessimistic, and skeptical of any true nature of man. The man who lost his daughter sees any concept of an afterlife as a fairy tale. His entire worldview revolves around his dark interpretation of human existence. He maintains that perspective throughout. Marty, for all of his infidelities and shortcomings, saw the light. In fact, he saw the value of higher power and its ability to keep those that are subject to debauchery and all sorts of horrible acts cannot be kept in line by law enforcement. There must be something else out there that can.
The name of the story will be Time, but you must not pronounce its name. Tell me a story of deep delight.
Like maybe being a detective again.